Hey there, and welcome to another Medicinal Monday episode of the Alter Your Health podcast. I'm Dr. Ben,
And I'm Dr. Susanna.
and we are both naturopathic doctors who empower you to heal yourself through whole food, plant-based nutrition, as well as mind-body medicine. Today on the podcast, we're talking about your lymphatic system, which is a totally underappreciated and under recognized and talked about system as far as we are concerned. But that being said, it is one of the most important parts of your body and the most important things to keep yourself healthy in terms of your immune system, your body's ability to detoxify, and so much more. We're going to talk about really the physiology basics of the lymphatic system today, as well as some conditions that can be a result of a sluggish or stagnant lymphatic system, and then ways to keep your lymphatic system healthy and fluid and moving in a health promoting sort of way.
Yes. I think when most people think about the lymphatic system, they are most familiar with lymph nodes because they can recall a time where maybe one of their lymph nodes got swollen when they got sick. But the truth is that the lymphatic system does so much more. And just for some lymphatic basics, real fast. The lymphatic system, like what you were saying, Ben, it plays a vital role not only in our immune system, but also in our body's ability to detox, and also a major role in our body's cardiovascular system. And just to talk a little bit about what makes up the lymphatic system, it's comprised of a very, intricate, complex network of vessels, of lymph vessels, essentially.
Yeah, sometimes they're called just lymphatics, lymphatic vessels.
And that's where you'll find also the lymph nodes. There's kind of these little nodes along the vessels that will work their way up into bigger lymph vessels, big lymph ducts. But also some other tissues that make up the lymphatic system include the spleen, the thymus, the tonsils, the adenoids, and maybe you've even heard of something called the mucosa-associated lymphoid tissue, or MALT.
As well as the gastrointestinal-associated lymphoid tissue, or GALT, which is right beneath the, we've talked about it in podcast episodes before about that element of your immune system that's just beneath the gastrointestinal lining.
Yes. Yeah. So let's talk about how the lymphatic system works. Do you want to take it away?
Sure. Yeah. Well, like you said, it's parallel to the circulatory system, right? We know the circulatory system has arteries and veins and smaller arterioles and venules, as well as capillaries. And the same is really true in terms of just the dynamics of the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system has little lacteals, they're called, which are kind of like the lymphatic capillaries that take fluid out of the interstitial space, or intracellular, or not intracellular, extracellular space, and absorbing it into the lymphatic system through these lacteals that become bigger vessels, and ultimately making their way into the thoracic duct, which is right here, a big duct that dumps right here in your upper chest.
Thoracic, and then there's also the right lymphatic duct. There's the right lymphatic duct, and then the greater thoracic duct.
That dumps into the subclavian vein, which allows all that extracellular fluid that is floating around between your cells, made up of all sorts of stuff. We'll get into the nitty-gritty details of what that fluid is, but it allows that fluid to re-enter your blood circulation. And I think a lot of people, talk about, oh, well, we've got this lymphatic system, we've got this circulatory system, and people say that the heart is the pump of the circulatory system, and it's kind of commonly known that the lymphatic system doesn't have this quote unquote pump. Well, the truth is, actually, as far as I know, the heart really doesn't do that much in terms of pumping and propelling blood throughout the miles and miles and miles of vascular system. We need our muscular contractions to support the movement of our blood through the circulatory system, but we definitely need those muscular contractions to support the movement of the lymphatic system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's talk about really, how a healthy lymphatic system really supports our different other systems like the immune system, the detoxification, the cardiovascular system, because that's going to make it all more tangible, right? So, Ben talked about how these lymphatic capillaries essentially draw fluid out of the interstitial space, is what it's called, and helps to deliver it back to the blood vessels, essentially. So we can think about how this really impacts our circulatory system, because if we didn't have those lymph capillaries that are drawing up fluid in the interstitial space, then we're essentially just dumping fluid into our interstitial space. It has no way to get back to our greater blood circulation.
Well, could we talk about what that fluid is, like what's in that fluid? I know that you were reviewing this content and you were talking about the plasma, which is essentially the water content of the blood that's in there. But it's really crazy to think about just your cells as these mechanical machine doing so many things within each one of those cells. And then of course there's the intracellular space, all the things that are happening inside of the cells. But the cells are also dumping stuff and relieving themselves of waste products that are building up inside of the cell. And they just kind of toss it out the door into the extracellular space, which is the interstitial space, like you were saying. So there's the plasma, like the water content of the blood, as well as some proteins and whatnot in that plasma. But there's also just all sorts of trash. And some people have referred to the lymphatic system as kind of like the sewage system, because it's kind of the processing center of all that waste material from what the cells are doing. So you could think about, if you've got kind of a lot of toxicity being processed in those cells, then you're going to have some toxic waste in the interstitial space that's going to lead to maybe sluggishness and stagnation of that lymphatic system. And we want to keep it moving to avoid toxic buildup, to avoid any sort of sewage system catastrophes that might otherwise happen in our bodies.
Yeah, because I love that analogy, because we can really think about how our sewage system, it does collect waste products and keeps the waste products really contained and protects the surrounding environment from those waste products and carries them away.
It's like out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, but also what the sewage system does is it helps to also recirculate and recycle the water that's in the sewage system, right?
Yeah.
Goes through the water processing plants and actually ends up in our tap water again, right? And that in that same way, the lymphatic system is also recirculating the fluid back into our bloodstream. And one aspect of this kind of capillary bed area we didn't talk about is that really what's happening is that the oxygenated blood comes from our arterial system into our little our arterial capillaries. I forget the
capillaries.
Yes, the oxygen-rich capillaries, and is delivering oxygen, nutrients to the hungry cells. And on the other side of this capillary bed are the whole venous system that's connected to our veins, that's bringing the deoxygenated blood back to our heart. And the venous
lungs,
back to the lungs and then to the heart. And so the venous system actually collects about 85% of that fluid, but the rest of it, that 15% that doesn't get collected by the veins, that's just left in the interstitial fluid. And so that's where the lymph is really crucial to, collecting the rest of that fluid and getting it back into the circulatory system, so that you're not left with edema, fluid retention in the tissues, swelling. So that's one big factor when we're talking about how it impacts our circulation.
Another visual that just came to mind is like the storm drains in the gutters that when it's raining outside and the gutters fill up, and then there's like the drains that allow the waters to go into, I don't really know where they go, but they collects the water so the streets don't flood. But then sometimes the streets do flood, especially when those storm drains get backed up with leaves and debris and trash and stuff. So that's kind of what could potentially happen as well.
That's true.
So we've gotten a little sciencey in terms of just the physiologic breakdown and anatomy of what's going on with regard to this lymphatic system. But should we talk a little bit about like the conditions that are helped by, or the conditions that can come from a sluggish lymphatic circulation?
Well, I think before we do that, we should talk about really the immune component of the lymphatic system.
Well, so a condition could be like immune dysfunction.
Certainly.
Yeah.
But I think it's just important to recognize that, once the lymph is collected from that interstitial space, it moves through bigger and bigger vessels until it gets to the big
Nodes.
Nodes, but eventually the ducts. But along the way are these lymph nodes, and lymph nodes, they really are centers where you'll find a lot of lymphocytes, a lot of white blood cells. So they're kind of, we talk about how the lymphatic system's like this sewage system, but it's also a security system, because there's these little security checkpoints all along the way as lymph nodes, where there are these like hubs of white blood cells that are looking out for any pathogens, any toxins, any cancerous cells, and they're creating the proper immune response to clear out all of those threats to the body.
Right, through the whole immune system cascade, and the signaling of the cytokines and the things that tell your immune system to turn on, to what degree, what branch of the immune system, the antibodies being created and released, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think it's always interesting to think like, oh, we've got a bunch of lymph nodes around our neck and in our groin, but literally lymph nodes are everywhere. And of course, they are varying degrees, or varying sizes, I should say, and they can become like activated if they are, there's stuff happening there, if there's activity happening there. But there's all these non-activated, just lymphatic centers or lymphatic nodes along the lymphatic vessels, literally everywhere.
Yeah, and just to highlight, just kind of the speciality of the mucosa associated lymphoid tissue, which is really lymphatic tissue that's outside of vessels, but it's in areas where there's more of an entry point to the body. So like our respiratory system and our GI tract. So the GULT, you mentioned the GULT, the gut associated lymphoid tissue, is a version of the mucosa associated lymphoid tissue. And this is just this extra barrier of protection where we have this lymphoid tissue where, we have rich amounts of lymphocytes, white blood cells that are ready to pounce on anything that might be coming in the body that we don't want to be there.
Yeah, they're kind of versions of lymph nodes.
Yeah.
Like the lymphoid tissue is, lymph nodes, you might imagine them being like a ball, and the lymphoid tissue is just kind of more spread out. So
the lymphatic system does a lot.
It does.
That was the first point of our podcast episode here.
Yeah. So the lymphatic system, the security, the lymphatic system is the detoxification, the sewage processing, and what's the other big thing?
Immunity.
Yeah.
But the other thing that we forgot to talk about is that it plays a major role in dietary fat absorption.
Of course, because actually when we eat fat, which we always do, whenever we're eating food, we're eating fatty acids, but the fatty acids don't go into our circulatory system the same way that our carbohydrates and our proteins do. The fatty acids get carried in the lymphatic system. And therefore, we'll be talking about how higher fat diets can put a strain on the lymphatic system and create more sluggishness and more viscosity in that system, which can kind of back up the sewage, if you will.
Yeah. So maybe you were suggesting we talk about maybe some signs or conditions that can result from kind of stagnation of the lymphatic system.
Yeah, I think for sure a lot of skin conditions, because we always talk about acne and eczema and these kind of skin conditions being connected with the liver, but maybe the middle point is actually the lymphatic system. So the lymphatic system is really It's like, yeah, they're conditions of toxicity, but mainly due to a stagnant lymphatic system, due to a sluggish liver. And yeah, you were talking about the chain of command between the liver and the lymphatic system, and how, of course, we know that our liver's primary role is detoxification, supporting our body and ridding waste, ridding toxicity from the body. And if the liver is backed up and unable to do that, then we just have a backup into the lymphatic sewage system. So a healthy liver really helps to create and maintain healthy lymphatics because of just the removal of that toxicity.
For sure. I mean, if we think about just how important and crucial that sequestering of waste products is that the lymphatic system does, it's like if there's any stagnation or sluggishness in the circulation of the lymphatic system, then it's simply just allowing waste products to hang out in those tissues for longer than they need to be. And then of
Yeah.
course that causes inflammation, and those tissues, wherever it is in the body, they're just not going to be functioning as optimally. So we can actually see how a stagnant lymphatic system can literally affect every tissue in our body.
Yeah.
But the skin health is where we can actually really see it visibly.
And also, it's like we've got lymphatics right beneath our skin. We've got, so it's like, and we know that our skin is one of the primary emunctories of the body, the way that we clear ourselves or cleanse ourselves of toxicity. So if there's overwhelming toxicity and it's right beneath the skin, it's going to be like, okay, I want to leave. I want to escape. So oftentimes, like, outbreaks of various sorts are a symptom of that lymphatic toxicity.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then of course, fluid retention, edema is a big sign that the fluid's just hanging out in the interstitial space. It hasn't made its way back into the bloodstream. So that's a big one. And also we can see the downstream effects of if the fluid isn't going back into the bloodstream, that can lead to lower blood volume, lower blood pressure, can lead to less oxygenation and nutrient delivery of that the circulatory system is responsible for. So we see how a lot of things are just kind of turned down in their efficiency and effectiveness when it comes to keeping the body healthy when the lymphatic system's sluggish.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to appreciate that just when we consider the connection between lymphatic circulation and cardiovascular circulation. And we know that the delivery of oxygen and nutrients to all of the corners of our body is so essential. And the removal of waste is also essential. So they really do go hand in hand. But are there any other real conditions that come to your mind when you think about a sluggish or strained lymphatic system?
Well, it's certainly, we hear about lymph health a lot in the context of cancer as well, because it is so important in preventing cancer to make sure that we have that good lymph circulation and that our lymphatic system is able to deliver those potentially cancerous cells to the lymph nodes to be cleared out. So, yeah, you hear about it a lot in the context of, people who are currently, maybe they're cancer survivors and want to prevent cancer. There's a lot of emphasis on lymphatic support there. So yeah, but really, I guess also we can think about other conditions related to immune health and just how there's potentially a link between a stagnant lymphatic system and also our immune system's ability to identify and mount the proper immune response to whatever pathogens are coming in.
Yeah, so let's talk about maintaining a healthy lymphatic system. And the way that we tend to approach things like this, it's like, I don't have any signs of lymphatic congestion or stagnation right now. But when we're talking about lymphatic health, and if you're listening to this, you're probably on the same kind of train of thinking that we want to be proactive. We want to live in a way that is, day in and day out, moment by moment, meal by meal, everything that we're doing is supporting lymphatic health, or all aspects of our health. but that's just our relationship to, I guess you could call it prevention, or just being proactive and empowered in how you're eating and living and moving. So at the top of the list is hydration. And optimizing hydration status is so important, because if you can just consider what a dehydrated scenario would look like. Of course, we lose a little bit of blood volume potentially when we're dehydrated, but also our lymphatic circulation becomes so much more viscous and stagnant because there's not as much water in the system. We talk about the body being about 60% water by mass, and most of that water being within our cells, hopefully, but a good amount of that water also being in the interstitial space that's then absorbed into the lymphatic circulation. So we want to maintain hydration status for so many reasons, including the health of our lymphatics.
Definitely. The next point is to stay active and use your muscles, because it's actually muscular contraction that helps move lymph along in the lymph vessels. And even though the lymph vessels have these really cool valves that actually prevent backflow and keep the lymph moving in the forward direction, but it's really muscular contraction that aids that process. So there's all sorts of different, types of movement that are known to be especially helpful for lymphatic circulation. Rebounding is one of them. Jumping on one of those little small trampolines has been known to really help lymphatic circulation, and also swimming.
And the reason why rebounding is so great, and this also kind of helps us think about other activities that could be great, is because it uses gravity. It uses gravitational forces. So also, yoga and doing like headstands and modulating the lymphatic system in that sort of way can be really helpful as well.
Right. Because if you think about it, we're trying to move fluid mostly from our extremities, which are lower, than our heart, lower than up here where the ducts are. So I got to get the fluid up there somehow. So yes, inversions are good. Also yoga and like twisting is also really good for helping to also get that interstitial fluid into the vessels.
Then talking about some things beyond movement, because we know movement's great, but also we talked about dietary fat and how higher fat diets create more stagnation and viscosity in lymphatics due to the fact that fat is transported in our lymphatic circulation. So a whole food plant-based diet that's naturally low in fat is a really great way to optimize lymphatic circulation. And then of course, all of our whole plant foods are also hydrating, so we're supporting our hydration status in that way, and then all the nutrients that support the immune system and detoxification pathways. So the synergy of our whole food plant-based diet, we're not just talking about eat a low food or a low fat diet. We know that low fat diets can be junk. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about eating a whole food plant-based diet that's super nutrient dense and naturally just tends to be lower in fat.
Yeah. The benefit of whole food plant-based eating is also that it's lower in toxicity, right? Because we're eating low on the food chain. We're not eating bioaccumulated toxins from animal products. So of course, in order to really keep our lymphatic system cleaner and freer from toxins, we also want to just minimize our toxicity exposure in every single way possible, including what we're putting into our mouth.
Yeah, and a lot of people talk about lymphatics massage, getting a deep tissue massage that's geared towards
it's lighter.
Oh, I don't know. I've never had it. But I was also thinking about dry skin brushing, which is kind of a self-massage sort of thing. And I guess it makes sense that it would be lighter because it's mainly, I know dry skin brushing is mainly focused at moving those lymphatics right beneath the skin. And again, sweeping them back up to our core circulation so that we move the lymphatic circulation back into the main circulatory system.
Yeah. So just, little note here, if you're interested in dry skin brushing or lymphatic massage, there's so many YouTube videos. So go there and find a good lymphatic tutorial.
Cool. And then hydrotherapy is, oh my gosh, we could go on, and we have gone on and on talking about the benefits of hydrotherapy, but it's really the cold water that actually supports the contraction of the microvasculature in a way that moves lymph throughout our body. Also for our peripheral circulation, walking barefoot in the cold grass or even in the snow for a few minutes if you can tolerate it, great way to move the lymphatics in those extremities.
Yeah, and when it comes to hydrotherapy, cold water hydrotherapy, really practically how I like to do this is and my shower on cold, but kind of blast some cold water to the areas where there are more of the hubs of lymph nodes, which tend to be like your armpits, your groin area. I don't know. I think it gives a little more boost to my immune system.
Why not? Why not? So, of course, we've talked all about the liver and the importance of supporting liver just for general toxicity removal. And that takes the pressure off of the lymphatics, which is delivering toxins and or shuttling toxins as well.
Yeah. And I mean, just to kind of articulate this more, if you think about it, the better that your liver is cleansing the body, the cleaner your blood is, the less viscous your blood is. That immediately will translate to less viscous lymphatic fluid because there's fewer waste products that it needs to clean up at that capillary bed site.
Right.
So a cleaner liver helps with cleaner lymphatics.
Yeah. And then, of course, there are other things, other, herbs and supplements that are specified toward lymphatic health. But if you have listened to what we have to share, we always like to focus on the lowest hanging fruit, the foundation of health, the things that are generally free and are actually what is at the root cause, because most people are not deficient in herbs. Most people are deficient in, real whole plant foods, deficient maybe in a little bit of healthy movement, a little hydrotherapy, these things that stimulate our self-healing potential.
Exactly.
So any last words about the lymphatics?
Oh, we got some comments here. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us live. So I mean, I think we covered it. And
cool.
Just a reminder of some of the other things we have going on. If you go to www.alter.health, you can take our free whole food plant-based challenge, learn more about circulatory health, detoxification, energy production, and more. So we welcome you to go over there and take the free challenge. And if you're looking at how to receive a little bit more support from us, we offer a supporters option where if you support Alter Health, you receive in return a weekly meal guide and a monthly community Zoom call.
So that's happening over at locals.com, alterhealth.locals.com. And then there's, of course, Thrive on Plants for a deeper educational and experiential healing opportunity. So thanks, as always, for tuning in, for learning and educating and empowering yourself about lymphatic health. And we look forward to staying in touch. Seeing you guys next time.
Bye for now.